My name is Crystal Sands. I'm behind the camera, and it's a really hot day here in Maine. And I am getting my husband, Ron Sands, to talk a little bit about water and water conservation when you're growing a garden. Um, he gardens with a lot of sustainable practices, which are very important, especially right now as so many people are experiencing heat and drought throughout the country. So I wanted to ask him a few questions. So say hi.
Hey,
Hi. So
hotter than seven shades of red here.
yeah,
People in California like boo-hoo, but it's still hot for Maine.
very hot for Maine. So first question is about watering the garden with sustainability in mind. Can you just kind of summarize the practices that you have?
Sure. I water this entire thing by hand. I don't use any overhead sprinklers. Um, what I've done here, like with the corn for example, is I've raked up a furrow on each side, and I will take my water. We had a rain here last night, so it doesn't really need water, but corn will take it. And I run it up like this all the way along. I got it figured out to where I have a pretty good pace and I use the water pretty efficiently. Corn likes a lot of water, so I usually put a couple of these on a row. It's 2 gallons, and I make sure it gets an inch at least every week.
Why is watering by hand so important? Like why is it better than using sprinklers?
Well, you lose a lot of water to evaporation in sprinklers, and you're limited to watering in the morning or at night. But even then, you're still going to lose a lot to evaporation. We're on a well here, and we're in a drought for the second year in a row, and I worry about our well pump, worry about the well going dry, and so the water is always on my mind. I don't need to be watering out here where the weeds are going to grow. And as you can see, in between these rows of corn, there are no weeds, partially because I do weed them, but not that many come up. I got on top of them early, and then without the water, there's not a lot to sustain them. Of course, after this rain, they'll start to come, but generally, they're not too bad. Yeah, so I just rake up like this, a couple of furrows. And you might wonder what happens when the corn gets this tall and it starts to spread out. Well, first of all, I leave about 30 inches in between rows, so I do have some room. And I will water by hand until it gets so tall that I start to brush up against the corn and maybe break it and damage it. And then what I do, I have a downhill slope here. I did that purposefully. Take a water hose up on the other end, on the high end, and I'll run water down these rows, and it will work its way all the way down here. Keep it blocked up at this end so it'll settle. Run it slow, and you can water it that way as well. And so when it gets so high, that's what I do. Still using the water efficiently, still keeping it on the corn where it needs to be.
So it kind of makes like a little tunnel in the dirt, in the earth for the water to
Well, it soaks right down in. It's just a trough for the water to run down.
trough. That's the word, trough. Cool. So these practices are important in general because of just general drought throughout the country and just a general effort toward conserving water. But I think it shows that you can still grow your food and not use a whole lot of water. What are some things what are some tips, like how can people use water, like leftover water from their house, and use it on their garden as well? Like just another way to be conservative with water.
Well, this is a mindset, really. You have to think about water as the resource that it is. I mean, if you take a look at what's going on in the West, and just in this last year, the reservoirs in the West, in California, Nevada, and even Oregon, Washington, all those places out there, the water level is just dropping dramatically. They're going to be hurting for water really soon, and with this climate change thing going on, it's important just to have that as a mindset, to think about water being a resource and not something that we can just take for granted. One of the things that we do is a shower, for example. We have a shower on the second floor, and it takes a little bit of time for the hot water to get up there. So I'll take a 5-gallon bucket and I'll run all the water that is cold until the hot water comes, and I'll put it in that 5-gallon bucket, put a lid on it, and I'll keep it. And we'll do that until we fill it up, and I'll bring it out here and put it in one of these water cans, and I'll water a row.
Awesome. Another thing, I just recently did the water bath canning for the jam, and it was the same thing. Instead of just dumping that water out, we saved it in the pot, and then it can go to be used as water for the garden.
Right. Something else I will do to help with water, I use compost in this garden, and when I create the rows, I will take a line of compost and put it along the row and then spade it in with my shovel, and it makes that elevated. It gets higher than the rest of the ground, and so when that happens, there's a tendency for the wind to suck the water out because it's higher. What I do is I'll take lawn clippings and I put them down here in between the rows, and that does two things. It keeps the weeds from growing, but it also helps hold the moisture in. The water's not being sucked out of this trough, and it helps hold it into where it needs to be.
Pretty carrots. Yay. What about for people who maybe don't have time to come out and hand water things? What is an alternative so that they don't have to turn on those sprinklers?
Soaker hoses. I've never used a soaker hose myself, but I understand that they're a pretty good alternative, that you can just run them down the row and turn them on and just leave them go for a certain period of time, and your ground gets good and saturated. It's important to make sure that when you are watering that you take the water deep. What you want to do is have the roots of the plant go deep looking for that water. So you don't want to keep it wet all the time. You do want to let it dry out so that the roots will actually seek water. It makes a stronger, healthier plant. And then water them again, but water deep.
Awesome. So doing things like making troughs with your rows, using grass clippings to help keep in the moisture. These are things that can be helpful. And you don't till, you do everything by hand. So you're just, making these troughs with your shovel, right?
Right. I till the whole thing with a shovel. What I do every fall, we have a lot of trees around here and a lot of deciduous trees, and we get a lot of leaves, and so I will take my mulching mower and I will mulch those leaves up, collect them, and I spread them over this entire garden, and I till them in every fall. And also these grass clippings will get tilled in. I have composted pine needles. I'll till them in. The more organic material you can put into your garden, the better. I mean, that helps the sustainability. When your plants are in here, they're taking out the nutrients, they're taking stuff out, and you've got to put it back in if you want it to sustain.
Awesome. And I'll get him to do another video where he talks about what all he does as a part of our cycle of sustainability to enrich the soil with what we have here on our little micro farm. And thanks to the chickens, we have some good stuff to add, but also the trees. I just wanted to show, this is what our sustainable garden looks like. It's beautiful. Look at those cabbages. Look at those carrots.
Wow. Dude, that's so awesome.
That's yummy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna eat one.